Welcome to the Church Brand Guide podcast. My name is Michael.
My name is Dennis.
We are getting into the topic of logos, church logos, and the design process behind it. The more you know about this process, the better you can get a great design for your church, or at least know if you do have a great design for your church right now when it comes to the logo. So Dennis, why is a logo so important?
Yeah, the logo is I would say it's the mark, it's the first mark people will recognize of your church. A lot of the things that we talk about is the importance of a brand, right? The person's perception. So usually the reason why people think logos are important because they just, and the logo is a funny topic because I don't think people really understand the true importance of a logo, right? It's kind of like one of those things that you just need, but you don't really know why you need it. And I think what's special about this episode that we're doing is we're going to kind of unpack that a little bit. But really, the reason why the logo is important is one, of course, it's a central part of your brand design, right? There's brand that is perception, but brand design is actually the tools that you use in the process of cultivating a brand that people can connect with, right? So the reason why the logo is important is because really a logo is also a tool for people to connect with you and to identify who you are and every other messaging that is a part of your brand. One of the things that I've seen with a lot of my clients is you have the churches who they're changing their logos every couple of years. I know one client that has changed their logo about 3 or 4 times in the past 3 years, right? And so in this episode, I want to talk about that a little bit, but I know that Michael, you do a lot of great logos. You've done hundreds of logos for your clients. And you not only know why the logo is important, but you can also speak into how the logo can connect with people who are even whether it's a first-time visitor or somebody that's been a part of your church for a long time. So can you kind of unpack your process, Michael, of how you help a ministry identify the best logo for them and who they want to become as an organization?
Yeah, if you've ever had a favorite team, like your favorite sports team, whatever that is, you understand, like when you see that logo, like there's something to it, right? It just kind of, there's an emotional, connection to it. It just connects with you. It resonates with you. You wear it. It's a sense of, man, I belong. Like this is my tribe. These are my people. Those
Shout out to the Dolphins.
All right, Dolphins. Good job. I love the Kansas City Chiefs. My family cheers for them, so that's kind of our thing. And of course, we've got T-shirts and different things. But a logo is really important because it creates that connection. It's the most seen thing in your brand. It's on everything. It should be on everything. And because of that, it makes you recognizable in your community. So if you think about great logos like Nike, if I say Nike, you know exactly what, you can see that swoosh in your head. You know exactly, if you see that swoosh somewhere, you know exactly what it is. There's a whole brand behind it. It's, sports and athletic and activity and all those different things that you think about when you think of Nike. And just that little swoosh makes that connection for you. When you're driving down the road and you've got, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old in the back seat and they see the golden arches up in the distance, they know what's going on. They want some fries. They want some burgers. They want some chicken nuggets. Even at 2 years old, like they recognize what it is. So a logo is extremely important. It's an icon of your brand. It's an icon of your church, and it becomes emotional. Like hopefully your church's brand, the vision is rooted in love, right? If Jesus had a brand, his brand would be love. It's grace, it's love, it's joy, it's peace, it's all these different things. And your church is probably in that same direction. So when people see that logo, they should have those type of connections with it. Oh, that's the place where I go and I feel loved and accepted, and I felt grace there, and all these different things. So that's the hope, right? And we wanted the logo to be done really well so that it really represents. And there's just certain things that we can do with a logo to make sure that it does that job. One is that it's very simple It just needs to be like the Nike swoosh again. It's super, super simple. You just see that swoosh and you know what's going on. You see those golden arches and it's very simple. It's not too complicated. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen in church world is that there's a really complicated logo that has a lot of different elements to it and it becomes noise. The more there is to your logo, the more noise visually it is. And that makes it less recognizable. So anyway, Dennis, that's a kind of a long introduction. I love logo design.
Yeah, you
Why
do.
don't you take us to our next step there?
Yeah, so in terms of the logo, it's while you were saying that, Michael, the thing that I quickly thought about is even like the Christian fish symbol. That's a logo,
Yeah.
and that symbol really was for Christians or the believers at the time who were part of the way uh, to identify themselves, right? So they would draw the top part of that fish symbol, and then they would they would do the bottom part of the fish symbol. That's how they identify themselves as part of the community, as part of the way. So as you were saying that, I even thought to like, man, like even throughout the Bible, even through historical times, logos have been used. Even if you think, if we can even call the cross itself a logo, right? That which used to be a crucifixion tool is now a symbol of hope for us, right? So I just love that's what I was thinking of. But now, in terms of logo, right? Uh, how does a church get a good logo, right? What is that, or at least can you define to us, Michael, your process of helping um, the church identify their logo, and then maybe you can start with the different types of logos.
Okay. So first we have to understand the brand. And that's almost a two-way street. Like for me coming in, if I'm helping a church to create a logo, I need to understand the brand. But what I found is a lot of times the church doesn't understand their brand. So what I want to do is help you understand your brand, and in that process, I get to understand your brand as well. So there's a questionnaire that I have. It's about 20 questions that unpacks your church from a branding perspective. So it's not a spiritual, questionnaire. It's a branding. Part of that is who's your audience. So a great design connects with your audience. The best logo designs connect with your audience. And I'll use Nike again because we're all familiar with it, and we'll just kind of keep that as a thing. When they designed that logo, it was for people that were runners, like they created shoes for runners, people that run. And so that swoosh had a sense of movement to it. The swoosh represents the goddess Nike in Greek mythology. And Nike had this wing, so it's this wing shape. Like nobody knows that, but it just feels right. Like if you're a runner, like that little swoosh, it just kind of feels right. So for your church, I want to create something that just feels right. Like people aren't going to look at it and be like, oh, it's got this and this and this. Oh, I get it. But it just feels right to them. Ultimately, that's the goal. So that happens first by understanding your brand, you understanding your brand in order so that I can understand your brand. So there's a questionnaire. From there, there's 3 different types of logos for churches. Again, I've been doing this for years and years, and I've just kind of saw a pattern. Oh, wait a minute. There's 3 different types of logos. And so what I like to do is create samples of logos in 3 different buckets. One is classic. Is your brand more classic, a little bit more religious? 2 is, I call it modern. Another way to put it is maybe a little bit more corporate in your approach. And 3 is trendy. It's got a little bit more nuance to it. It's a little bit more trendy. So those are the patterns that I see as a designer. So I want to help serve you. I want to help serve your team by saying, hey, here's 150 logos, and I want you to tell me your top 5. And from that, what I can gather as a designer, like you don't have to know language and all the different design terms of, I like these analogous colors or the sans serif fonts. You don't have to know that stuff. You just tell me what your favorite ones are and why you like them. And then from there, I'll know exactly how to design. So that's the first part of our process, the questionnaire. And then I need you to identify 5 logos out of our 150 samples that you can tell me which ones you like.
And so, Michael, right there, let me ask you a question with that process, right? Before we continue on to the next thing, in terms of identifying a logo, you just told us, the right approach to kind of take it with the help of somebody else. But what would you say is a big mistake or a few mistakes that ministries, pastors, churches make when they're trying to identify a logo for their organization?
The biggest mistake is they design a logo for themselves. So pastors will be like, I like purple, we should do purple. Our church it's a gospel church.
Yellow's my favorite color.
Yeah. we believe in the Bible. We believe in the cross. We believe in the guidance and the leading of the Holy Spirit. You know what? Let's make our logo a cross, a Bible, and a dove. So that's the biggest mistake that I see, because you're not serving your audience when you do that. You're serving yourself. So as a church leader, don't make that mistake. Make sure you are looking at your audience and say, hey, what do they need? What are they going to connect with? And let's just make sure we create something that they are going to like. So anyway, that's the number one mistake that I see.
That's so good, and I love how you said that. It's like, don't design a logo for yourself, right? And I think that goes with creative in general. It's like, don't design anything just for yourself, right? You always want to be thinking about that community that you're trying to create, right? What will they resonate with? And I think even when I think about logo and design, it's like a lot of people don't know that colors, fonts, each of them have a certain meaning. Right? Each color actually has a meaning that it represents. Each font is even a language within itself, right? And if you don't have a design background, you won't really know these things, right? If we put up a picture of different logos, you would be able to identify the feelings in the different colors that each of those logos kind of represent, right? So like I always say, my biggest encouragement when we talk about anything is get some help, right? Get some people like Michael who are going to take you through a process, right? Who are going to help you identify which makes the most sense for your brand, right? And one more question, Michael. So now let's say, for example, okay, somebody is working on that logo. They're trying to identify which logo is the best for them. You talk through kind of like the process, but in terms of deliverables, when they're deciding on a logo, what should they look out for? Or what are some ways or tips that they can test that logo before they make it live for the whole world to see?
So I like to say it this way, like as a church leader or leadership team, you should like the logo design, but your audience should love it. So we don't want you have to live with it. So I get it. So in the process, that's why we do the top 5 and everything. I want to make sure I design something that you will like, you can live with. But from I want to be that expert to say, hey, based on the audience we're trying to reach, these are the design features that we need to make sure we include in that design, so your audience connects with it. And then what I like to do is I like to provide 2 to 4 options. I don't want to provide 25 options. Okay, so you're hiring me, or you're hiring your designer to be the expert and to serve you. I'm not serving you if I'm giving you 25 options. What I want to do is use my expertise to say, hey, these are the 3 options that check off all the boxes. 1, 2, 3, 3 different looks. You get to choose from those different things. But from a design perspective, it's going to be vector-based, a vector-based design. We don't want a pixel-based logo. Vector-based allows you to scale it really, really large or very, very small. A pixel-based logo, if it's designed in Photoshop or a program like Canva, it's not going to work. It's not going to be scalable. So it needs to be designed in a vector program, something like Adobe Illustrator. So again, I want to serve you. I want to be the expert. I want to bring that to the table to be like, hey, this is what it's going to work. We don't want to have like drop shadows or avoid gradients, just so it can be reproduced on all different types of media. If you wanted to put it on a coffee mug, it needs to work. If you wanted to put it on a t-shirt and you're paying for every color imprint that you have on a t-shirt, you just want to make sure that it works as a one color design if it needs to. So again, I want to provide that expertise, bring that over to you. What I like to do is provide 2 to 4 options. I like to do mock-ups. Like, here's what it would look like on a t-shirt. Here's what it would look like on a website. Here's what it would look like on a coffee mug. Maybe your church, part of your brand is like you're an active brand, like you're for people that are active and all that stuff. Well, then what I might do is create a tumbler and put your branding on the tumbler and show it to you to be like, hey, if you wanted to, provide some merch that is a tumbler for active people, this is what it would look like. So that way you try it on. It's like when you go to the store, you're trying on, a suit. Like, you don't just buy the suit, you try it on, make sure it's a good fit. So I want to serve you well. I want to bring all that to the table so your team can make a really great decision when it comes to, like, is this the right logo for our church? And I bring my expertise to make sure it's the right logo for your audience.
That's so good. That's so good. In terms of the logo, I know we have to wrap up this episode now, but in terms of the logo, some of the key points I think we talked about is, again, a logo is like an icon for your brand. Like, think about the Batman symbol, right? That should, if you have that culture, that's what your logo should be in your city, right? When people in your city see that logo represents your values. That logo should represent what you stand for and what you stand against, right? So when it comes to a logo, again, my tip is, hey, get some help. Get somebody that can help you identify what's the best direction for you, what's going to resonate with your audience. The best thing about hiring an expert like Michael is it will help you really kind of define your brand, because what we said is most people don't really know what their brand is, right? You might have an idea of what it is, but most people can't really put it into words. Right? So get somebody that can help you define that brand. Again, when you're designing that logo, make sure that logo works everywhere. Maybe make sure that logo can work on a shirt. It can work on your website. It can be embroidered. It can be a stamp. It can be whatever, right? And that's really what's going to help you produce something that's going to serve you not just for a month or so, but for the long term, right? Especially a lot of the churches that I work with, they're trying to build a multi-generational church. They're trying to build a church for the future, but also a church that serves in the now, right? So something like their logo is super important with how we design it, because it has to speak to multiple people, right? It has to speak to multiple generations. It has to work for the long term. So again, if you need some help, reach out to a person like myself, or reach out to a person like Michael. So we can help you through this process. Michael, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
Yeah, man, you made some really good final thoughts there on your own. But for me, I think the final thought is make sure you get a brand guide with your logo. So the brand guide allows you to stay consistent over a long period of time. It defines the logo and what makes it unique, and make sure that you're using the right colors and fonts and the right type of presentation every single time, because that builds trust. So a brand guide is it's almost like a little book that tells you, the designer that creates your logo should give that to you, in addition to the files that you're going to need to then use that logo internally. So you're going to need PNG, JPEG, and EPS files to be able to print on just about anything and everything that you could possibly imagine. Start off simple. Like if you're a church plant, maybe you do get the Fiverr design for $20, and that's just where you are. But as much as you can, I would say invest into the logo. It's going to be well worth it. It's going to help your church to be recognized, and that's a huge thing, to cut through the noise and be able to reach people. You just have to get the right design done, and it's going to cost you a bit. Like, it's going to cost. Some companies and businesses will pay tens of thousands of dollars to get this done right, because they know it's worth it. They're going to get the investment back. As a church, be ready to pay, maybe not tens of thousands, you don't have to pay tens of thousands, but be ready to pay what it's worth, so to speak, to get people to notice your church. So don't look for the greatest deal, or the kid that's 16 that knows how to use Photoshop. Like, make sure you get this right for your church. It means too much. It matters too much to get this wrong. And then one final thought, I can't close it without this, but an audience, when we talk about a target audience, we're not, it's just not a spiritual thing, right? Everybody's welcome from a spiritual side of it. But when we're designing, we need an audience, something, a target to shoot for, to design towards. So this could be a mindset. A lot of times, that's what I like to do is, what is the mindset of the person that goes to your church, that loves your church? So it's not necessarily a demographic, like a 23-year-old female, that type of thing. It's more of a mindset. Like, what do people at your church, like, how do they think? And let's design a brand towards that. And that's going to help us move in the right direction. Anyway, those are my final thoughts. There was a few there.
So good, so good. Yeah, and I think I have one more final thought. Again, I just want to reiterate. It's like, again, if you're a church plant, maybe you don't have a budget. Getting advice sometimes is still free, right? One of the things that I see a lot of people do is you can join a Facebook group with other churches and other strategists on it. And maybe you did go on Fiverr and you went and you got that logo, right? But you can still ask people for their opinion, right? You can still ask people what they think, right? Whenever you're doing anything as it relates to design or creative, especially something like Michael said that matters so much, you want to get other people's thoughts and opinions around it. So you can make sure that you're truly designing something that's going to last you a very long time.
Excellent. Well, hey, thanks for unpacking this with me, Dennis. I really appreciate your voice in this process. It's one of those things that I am extremely passionate about, if you can't tell. I love designing brands for churches, and because I know the difference that ultimately it makes. It's kind of the genesis or the heartbeat of even the Church Brand Guide and what we do here on the podcast. So hopefully this is helpful to you, gives you some great insights to make sure you have a great logo design for your church that ultimately unpacks your brand so people notice you and want to be a part of what you're doing in your city. If you would, we would love for you to subscribe to this podcast so more people can know about it. Let people know about it as well. If you have some people that are fellow pastors or communicators in your world, we'd love to help them as well. So subscribe and leave us a review if you have a moment to do that as well. We'd love to read those and get some feedback from you. But thank you for joining us today on this episode, and we will see you on the next one.